Ever wondered how the concept of British nobility came to be? Well, to uncover this intriguing tale, we must journey back to the time of the Anglo-Saxons. In this period, society was divided into three classes: the Eorls, who were the elite warriors, the Sea-Orls, free peasant farmers, and the slaves. Yet, the concept of nobility, as we know it today, was still in its nascent form. Fast forward to the year 1066. The landscape of England was forever altered by the Norman conquest. Taking the helm was William the Conqueror, a man whose influence on British nobility cannot be overstated. William introduced the feudal system, a hierarchical structure where the king granted land, known as fiefs, to his loyal nobles or lords in return for their military service. This establishment of a structured nobility system was a turning point in the British history. Now let's delve into another intriguing aspect: the creation of hereditary titles. The concept of passing down titles through generations was not a common practice during the Anglo-Saxon era. However, with the Norman conquest, things took a dramatic turn. William started the tradition of granting titles that could be inherited by the next generation. This was a strategic move, ensuring loyalty to the king, as these titles came with significant lands and privileges. Titles such as Duke, Earl, and Baron became the new norm. They were not just mere designations, but symbols of power, influence, and prestige. The higher the title, the more power it held, and the closer the title holder was to the king. This was the beginning of a system that would evolve and adapt, surviving the test of time and history. And so the seeds of British nobility were sown, destined to grow into a complex system of prestige and power. This was the genesis of British nobility, a fascinating journey that began over 1,000 years ago. But remember, this is just the beginning. As we peel back the layers of history, we will uncover more about the evolution and impact of this intricate system. As centuries passed, the landscape of nobility shifted and evolved. But how did these titles change over time? During the medieval period, titles were primarily military ranks. The king would grant land or a fief to his loyal knights, who in turn became his vassals. These knights were then elevated to the status of nobility, thus becoming lords. The title a lord held often reflected the size of his land and the number of knights under his command. However, the hierarchy of nobility began to change during the Tudor period. The monarchy started to centralize power, reducing the military importance of the nobility. Instead, titles became more about social status and political influence. The title of Duke, previously a military rank, was elevated to the highest rank beneath the monarch. This period also saw the creation of new titles, such as the Earl, a position of great influence and prestige. The Stuart period was a time of further evolution. The monarchy was restored, and with it, the importance of noble titles. The title of baronet was introduced, a hereditary title ranking below baron but above knight. It was during this period that the peerage, the legal system conferring titles of nobility, was formalized. The Act of Union in 1707 marked a significant shift in the British nobility. England and Scotland were unified under one monarchy, creating the peerage of Great Britain. This meant that titles were no longer tied to specific geographical regions, but were now a part of a unified national system. This had the effect of increasing the prestige and influence of certain titles while diminishing others. The evolution of titles, then, is a reflection of the changing power dynamics and societal structures of the time. As the monarchy centralized its power, titles became less about military service and more about social standing and political influence. And with the Act of Union, the peerage of Great Britain was established, signifying the unification of the nobility under a single system. So we've seen how the titles came to be and how they evolved, but what role did these nobles play in British society? The British nobility have had a significant influence in shaping the country's politics, culture, and economy. Their roles and responsibilities were far-reaching and varied. At the forefront of their duties was the political responsibility they held. Nobles were, and still are, members of the House of Lords, the upper chamber of the British Parliament. Here, they were involved in making and passing laws and played a major role in the governance of the country. Politics, however, was just one part of their responsibilities. The nobility also had a profound impact on British culture. They were patrons of the arts, commissioning works from renowned artists, architects, and musicians. They played a significant role in shaping the cultural landscape of Britain. Their grand estates and castles, many of which still stand today, are testaments to their influence and taste. Beyond politics and culture, the nobility were key in the British economy. They were landowners, with vast estates that were farmed and managed. These lands provided employment for many, and the wealth generated from them contributed significantly to the economy. The nobility were also involved in trade and industry, using their wealth and influence to drive economic growth. The nobles were not just idle aristocrats. They were lawmakers, patrons, landowners, and industrialists. They had a hand in every aspect of British society, and their influence can still be felt today. They shaped the laws that governed the land. They patronized the arts that defined the culture, and they drove the economy that sustained the nation. The nobility's role has evolved over the centuries, but their impact on British society remains undeniable. They have had a hand in shaping the nation's history, traditions, and identity. Their influence extends beyond their titles and their estates and into the very fabric of British society. British nobility, then, have been key players in shaping the nation's history and identity. Fast forward to the 21st century, what does it mean to be a noble in modern Britain? Well, it's a question that stirs up a mixed bag of answers. The role of nobility has undeniably morphed over time, and it's not quite what it was in the days of knights and castles. Today's nobility, in many ways, is more symbolic than practical. The power once wielded by the aristocracy has been significantly diluted, largely due to the House of Lords Act of 1999. This legislation was a game-changer, and it's worth a moment of our time. The House of Lords Act effectively removed the automatic right of hereditary peers to sit in the UK's upper house of Parliament. Out of about 750 hereditary peers, only 92 were allowed to remain. This was a seismic shift, reducing the political power of the hereditary nobility to a mere whisper of what it once was. But what about the perception of nobility in contemporary British society? Well, it's complicated. On one hand, there's a certain fascination with the nobility, with their grand estates, centuries-old traditions, and let's admit it, the drama. Just think of the popularity of shows like Downton Abbey and The Crown. On the other hand, in an era of democracy and social mobility, the idea of inherited privilege can seem out of step, even a tad archaic. There's a growing sentiment that titles and privilege should be earned, not inherited. Yet it's also true that many modern nobles have carved out roles for themselves beyond their titles, contributing to society in fields as varied as politics, charity, business, and the arts. So, what's the verdict? It's a bit of a paradox. The nobility is both a relic of a bygone era and a living, breathing part of modern Britain. It's a testament to the country's rich history and tradition, but it also reflects the changing times and societal values. Today's nobility, then, is a testament to a history of power, prestige, and privilege, yet it also reflects the changing times and societal values. So, to recap, we've journeyed from the inception of British nobility, witnessing the dramatic evolution of titles. We've seen how these titles have shaped and been shaped by the role of nobility in British society, a dance that continues to this day. In our modern era, the British nobility continues to adapt, its relevance ever shifting, a testament to the resilience of tradition. In the end, the story of British nobility is a fascinating journey through time, reflecting the nation's history and its evolving societal values.